Shall we begin?
Why not? Welcome to Frankie Sense and More. It's like she's got a whole lot of goodness for you with a little bit of sass.
Frankie, did you just say...
She sure did. Not to mention, along with...
Whoops.
Join us now as Frankie Picasso and her new co-host mix it up with authors, musicians, and interviews with world-changing people.
Let's begin, girl.
Okay, let's begin now, because it only makes sense.
Hello there, and welcome to Frankie Sense and More. It's my pleasure to have you join us today. I have a few guests with me. I have Dovid Krafchow is here with us, and Brent Marchand, what is the word I'm looking for? Our regular movie critic, I guess we can call him, our movie correspondent. He'll be with us a little bit later. And today I am dedicating our show to the United Nations Global Goals, number 16, Peace and Justice. So Dovid Krafchow is a Yudi mystic, a Jewish Bohemian, author, tarot instructor, reader, I should say. He's a radio show host and a media personality. David has been studying the secrets of the Torah for over 45 years in their original language, Hebrew and Aramiaic. And as well, he has been practicing the tarot for, let's say, the last 30 years. He's the author of more than 15 books, 5 of which are currently published. And Dovid, I should say, has mentioned that living with autism has enabled him to gain an understanding of the mysterious self, as well as recognition and insights into other areas, specifically the Kabbalah. Welcome to the show, Dovid. My pleasure to have you.
Hey, thank you so much. My pleasure to be here.
You know, having lived on this planet more than 70 years, I have to assume that you have some knowledge of life and how it works, and especially since you have been studying the mystics, I would say, you know, the Kabbalah, the Torah, the tarot, all of those bring great insight. But I want to just go back a little bit to when you were 17 years old, because where did you grow up?
I grew up on the peninsula of San Francisco.
Okay.
It was very pristine in those days, before Silicon Valley. A lot of beautiful orchards and blue skies. It was really something. That's where I grew up.
So the Pacific Northwest has really always been a draw for you, I guess, ever since then.
The Pacific? Certainly. I went in the Navy then and sailed the Pacific. It's something that's really... it's just so dramatic. It's the largest sea in the ocean in the world, and out in the middle of the Pacific, the waves are like mountains on a still day. Really something.
Now you joined the Navy, as you said, and you went to Vietnam? Were you in the Vietnam War? Did I get that right?
I was on the flagship. I was in communications. I was a electronic technician.
Okay.
And so we were on this was the flagship of the amphibious force. So we were sent out actually to invade on the demarcation line between North and South to try to stop the hostilities. And 24 hours before the invasion, we got a message from the Pentagon, which in those days, I think they had to bounce it off the moon, saying that we should forget about the invasion, take everyone to Saigon, and they had decided to fight a conventional war, which everyone knew we could not win. Mm-hmm. So, and for a year before I got out, I was one of the last people to get out before before no one got out. That, we were taking people there. A lot of just young, scared guys who, many of them just never returned. And it was really, we were all very patriotic in those days. We'd grown up patriotic. Mm-hmm. And those of us who saw this from either America or from Vietnam knew that patriotism was over.
So how old were you when you left? How old were you when you got out?
21. I went into what was called the kiddie cruise. If you went in while you're 17, you got out the day before you're 21, which was 1965. And I went back to San Francisco, and LSD was still legal at that point. I kind of went from one world to another.
Right, pretty crazy. So you were down on at Haight-Ashbury. Is that where you hung out?
I didn't. I was a hitchhiker. I'd grown up in San Francisco in the Bay, on the peninsula. So I certainly, I went there. I knew the area a bit. I don't know. I was a hitchhiker. Everyone was coming west. I was always going east. So it just, no one really knew what to do in those days. No one thought we would, live to see 30. People didn't think that the world would survive, nuclear holocaust. And it really spurned people to live in the present.
Right, yeah.
And that's what kind of brought about, in my opinion, a lot of this, where love really surfaced. There really wasn't time for a courtship. It was just love.
Right, yeah. Instant love. Love.
Yeah.
I remember the placards, love, everybody in love. So now I read that you did not know about your Jewish roots. How did you find out about them?
Well, I knew that I was Jewish, and that was always, a big thing to me. I just really didn't know anything about being Jewish. I hadn't been bar mitzvahed. I just knew nothing.
So your mother was Jewish and your father, or did you?
Both parents were Jewish, but I think particularly my father was very affected by the Holocaust.
Right.
And he was in the war, but then got injured, and they found out he had a medical problem, and he had to leave the army. And I think having to watch the Holocaust from America and not until he couldn't do anything about it, I think really did something to him. That whole generation, I mean, these were just, they were very violent people. The people who watched it,
right.
A lot of violence. There was just a residue of violence in America after that. I think we all grew up with in the 50s, and it was kind of this, beneath the placidity of the 50s, there was this underground sort of volcano happening, and I think the children, those of us of the 60s, that we opted for love. We saw enough war already,
right.
And all grew up with you go to the movies as a kid, they always showed you the atomic bomb like it was something to be proud of, and it was, I think people really still feel, extremely manipulated. And that no one, particularly in the 60s, there weren't any rules. There weren't any elders. All there was the future, which didn't seem, very, didn't seem to extend very far. So
at 26, you began to study the Torah. And for 5 years, you did that among the ultra-Orthodox Hasidim. And that's when you wrote your first book. So when was it that you began looking at the tarot cards as well?
Well,
before or after?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually hitchhiked down to Brooklyn and found myself in the middle of this thing, and they threw me out, which somehow was a sign to me I should stay. And
such a rebel.
And I did, and I just really fought through it, and I'm glad that I did, because I really wanted to see this thing at its essence as much as I could, and I really saw things, before they became maybe more popular, and I really but it wasn't for 20 years later that I was in a bookstore. I was living in New York at the time, and I picked up a book of tarot, and it kept saying Kabbalah, Kabbalah all through the tarot book. And so I went out and got a deck of tarot, which they had there, the Rider-Waite deck, and I went home. I spread it out on the floor, and the 78 cards, and I could see what was Kabbalistic about it. And I could understand this language. It was absolutely clear to me. And so I did a reading for myself, and the reading I did for myself really just blew me away, because it just said exactly what was going on in my life. And I kind of realized, I was 50 years old at that time, and I realized, wow, I found my thing, Mm-hmm. Like everyone kind of has a thing, and they hope to find it in their life. You see in the 60s, people could play guitar, sing, or do Tai Chi, and people have these things that's just kind of a natural thing for them.
Right.
And that's what I found with the cards. That became like the thing that I could do.
So when you went to New York and you found yourself among the ultra Orthodox, and you wanted to study the Torah, did you know Hebrew at the time?
I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the alphabet.
Wow. Nothing.
And language is not an easy thing for me. I'm much more a visual person. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, my key to the Torah is the Torah is actually very visual. And so I have a hard time, even now, like I mispronounce words, and I can't understand anything anyone will say to me. But if I read it, I understand it. I'm just a very visual person, just like, it's part of my whole trip, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how fascinating that you learn the language and the Aramaic as well. You
really have to. If you don't, and the books are just locked away from you. If you're relying on translations, you just never, you just never have. It's like reading a book about love and not being in love.
So it was like you stayed in like a yeshiva. Is that what it was like? You went to school every day for 5 years?
Well, I did for the first year. And then I left and went off and started driving a truck and just kept studying on my own. I felt in 1 year I had the basic building blocks I knew that I needed, and after that it was just a matter, of just reading.
And then you went to northern Israel for 10 years.
And I lived in northern Israel for 10 years. That's certainly where I did the majority of my study.
Well, we're going to a break, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Pay the bills.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
To lose weight, we know that each day we need to burn more calories than we take in through eating, and exercise burns more calories. According to Discovery Health, a 150-pound person will burn about 60 calories while taking a 1-hour nap. 1 hour of sitting and watching television burns about the same. But if that 150-pound person takes a 1-hour brisk walk, then say goodbye to more than 250 calories. Cardio exercise like running, biking, swimming, and brisk walking are the best modes of exercise to burn the highest amount of calories and will get the endorphins flowing in your body. Those feel-good neurotransmitters boost your mood naturally. So use exercise to burn calories, lose weight, and to feel good. I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
It's words you never heard.
Have you ever found yourself on an airplane seated next to a nonstop talker that you really don't have anything at all in common with? When I fly, I usually want to catch up on my reading and not have to listen to an explatterator. It's even worse if they're a philodox. That's a person who just loves their own opinion. Well, now a Facebook app lets you choose your own seatmate before you fly. According to an article in USA Today, social media startups are bringing together compatible flyers before they take their seats. That's good news for people lovers, otherwise known as philodemics. A number of apps such as Planely and Satisfy are helping travelers meet not only online, but in person. Think the Match.com of travel. I love flying and have been to almost as many places as my luggage.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
And we're back. You're listening to Frankie Sense and More. I am your host, Frankie Picasso, and my guest today is Dovid Krafchow, and I apologize for going into that last break unexplained, unannounced. I was just so interested in what Dovid was saying that time ran away with me that time. So we're back, and we were talking about how he moved to Israel for 10 years and he studied, and before he coming back to America. So tell us what it was like living in Israel. Were you on a kibbutz, or did you live in a city?
Well, there are 4 ancient cities in Israel that correspond to the 4 elements. Mm-hmm. And the city of earth is Hebron, where the fathers are buried, and the city of fire is Jerusalem, where the temple was and the altar was, and the various, if they call it Tiberias, they call it the Kinneret, where the god Belial. That's the city of water, and spot where I lived was the city of air. And that's where the Zohar 2,000 years ago was written, and that's where the Kabbalah came about 500 years ago. So being there and studying there and breathing the air of this city was just like living in a dream.
What revelations came to you after you read the Torah that you didn't know or that you never thought about?
That's a good question. Being kind of a vision person, I had a conception of what creation is. And learning the Torah has so much broadened my vision as to what that is. And also to have a better understanding of who the Creator is. We have this relationship with the Creator. We all do. It's just implicit in us. And the Torah really helps to illuminate exactly, but illuminate the nature of this relationship with the Creator. Mm-hmm.
So, there are people who read the Bible and people who read the Torah who say that, man wrote that down and maybe they just made it up and who knows. After reading it, and you said that you developed this relationship with God or the Creator, the universe, whatever you want to call it, did you feel that these were true words?
Well, see, here's the thing. And because in those days, I came there in 1970, and I spent 5 years after the Navy really searching for what was true. I just, you couldn't believe politics. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who to believe. And I tried different, not religions, but different disciplines. And the thing that, besides the fact I'm Jewish, this is a Jewish thing, but the thing that got me was that this is prophecy. Mm-hmm. And prophecy comes from heaven and has to be exact. And like in the Torah, like if one letter in the Torah that they read, weekly, if there's one letter in the Torah, there's 600,000 letters, and if one of them has even a crack in it, the entire thing is no good. You have to read from something else. Because this is prophecy. And as far as I know, only the Jewish people and the Muslim people have it, which is the Torah and the Quran. And both of us go to tremendous ends to keep the text precisely the way it is. And therefore, for me, I could say, okay, this says it's true, now prove it. And I could ask all my questions to it. Mm-hmm. And it draws you in, and it always shows you like from a different perspective. And through this process, you start getting a bigger understanding of creation and the Creator. And see, other books, including the Bible, these are not prophecy. They don't claim to be prophecy. And so these are written by people. Mm-hmm. And much of this stuff cannot be believed at all. But prophecy, even though we don't understand it initially, but the fact that we're dealing with something that came out of heaven, that's what makes it profound.
So what should we know about the prophecy that's coming up? Is there a prophecy coming up for us? I think you mentioned something about, the 6,000-year Hebrew calendar turns 5,777, and you said it's a monumental thing for us.
Yes, a monumental time. Absolutely. You see that the story of creation happening in 6 days. And if one reads the text carefully, they'll see the only thing that was created was the human being. Everything else existed beforehand. So, there was no creation of the elements. The elements were already there. And it says in the Kabbalah, in the Medrash, how God played with creation for 2,000 years before creating. And those 2,000 years can be, they're really 250,000 years. Mm-hmm. And then that moment of creation of the human being was the beginning of the 6,000-year Hebrew calendar. And in the year 666, which of that calendar, Hanuk, who was taken to be Metatron, the angel of the earth, is given all of the secrets of time. Mm-hmm. And that's when the Mayan calendar begins. And the Mayan calendar is delivered to the Mayan people during the time of Muhammad. And it's, in my mind, I think the famous night journey he takes on his horse landed him in Mexico, because prophets are prophets for the whole world, and they say that a god came from the sky riding on a feathered serpent, because there weren't any horses in the Americas at that time. They had never seen a horse. Mm-hmm. So we see all these things tied together, and the Mayan calendar ended at 2012, when we were directly facing the center of the galaxy. So we understand that 666 has to do with sexuality, and this was the conception, and 2012 is like the dilation, and now we're into the process of pushing this new birth out. And 7, because the 6 is male. This is space, the 6 directions of space. And it's played out in each 1,000 years. Each 1,000 years is a culmination around 666. In our 1,000 years, it was 1906. And it's interesting, a week before 1906, before 5,666, Einstein published E equals mc squared. And everyone wondered why he had waited for 6 months. And because it's a very just strong time. It's the same time that Picasso discovered Cubism, which is very fundamental to the Torah, because the 10 Commandments were given in 2 cubes. So there's many things, and then this was a tremendously creative time. And then, but unfortunately, the other forces turned all this energy into war, and we believe it had war, since about the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. And it was actually prophesied. I don't know, you can't say prophesied. It was predicted about, I think it was maybe 800 years ago, 1,000 years. I don't remember. There's something called Yehudi mystic. He said in this year of 5,777, because he lived in 4,777, that would be like, a great opening for the world, because 6 is male, and 7, which is space, and 7 is time, which is woman. So we're moving into 1,000 years of woman. That's what happens after the 6 days. There's the day of rest. That each day is 1,000 years. So we're moving into 1,000 years of woman, and the 777 is indicative of this, because it's 3 times 7, plus it makes 21, which is the, in Hebrew, every letter has a number attached to it. So the futuristic name of God, Yeh, equals 21.
The God equals 21? Yeah.
The name the name Ihia. And there's a name we know that will be used for God in the future. It's not used now. It's Ihia. And that equals 21. So 777 equals 21. And also in that year, like a year from now, there will be a total eclipse going right across America.
So you're saying that because it's the year of the woman, that this is the year that Hillary becomes president?
I wouldn't say that, no. I would much prefer that Bernie becomes president. Woman is not about physical woman.
Okay.
Right? Woman is about all the things that women represent.
Okay. I get you.
The kindness, the compassion, the completion. In tarot, the 10, which is always completion, this is woman. It's called Malkut, and these things are also borne out in our solar system from the sun to Pluto, that each of the 10 orbs represents a point on the tree of life, and it's so exact that only the Creator could have done.
So interesting. When we come, we're going to go to a break very soon, but when we come back, actually, you know what, before we go to this break, why don't you tell us for those who don't know, what the Kabbalah is?
Well, the Kabbalah was that it's mentioned all through many of the books, and it means to receive. There's certain secrets people have received, and you don't learn them out of a book. You just receive them, and when they're spoken, people go, that is part of the received message. We all recognize that. Someone brings it to light. But all the Torah, all the oral tradition for 1,000 years was written down 2,000 years ago when Rome was, destroyed Israel and pushed the Jewish people into the diaspora. And they wrote everything down. One of the things that was written down was the Zohar. But it wasn't, and this was the highest level.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to come back and you're going to finish that. But we are going to go to a break. You are listening to Frankie Sense and More. My guest today is Dovid Krafchow. And when we come back, we are going to speak more to him. And also Brent Marchand is going to join us in the conversation.
Frankie Sense and More. We'll be right back after we pay the bills.
It's words you never heard.
The first official 4th of July party was held at the White House in 1801. But did you know that countries other than the U.S. celebrate American Independence Day or July 4th? Denmark, Italy, Portugal, and England all have 4th of July parties. In fact, the British celebrate their independence with bungers and fizzgigs, otherwise known as firecrackers, just like in America. Squib is slang for an electric match used in pyrotechnics. Our dog celebrates July 4th every year the same way, by cowering under the bed. Many European celebrations take place, of course, at American military bases. I'd like to send a special thanks to all our armed forces stationed around the world for everything you do to provide freedom and independence to America.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Sodium intake can be problematic because most Americans have way too much. The recommended sodium intake is 2,300 milligrams a day, but the average intake in the U.S. is 3,400 milligrams a day. Sodium attracts fluid, and too much leads to hypertension, which raises your chances of having a stroke, heart failure or heart attack, and kidney disease. Table salt is definitely a culprit of high sodium intake, but there are other seemingly unseen ways to take sodium in. Sports drinks, energy drinks, and sodas all have high sodium levels. Macaroni and cheese, seasoned rice, and other boxed meals contain high amounts of sodium, along with processed meats, especially if they have been cured, smoked, or canned. Restaurant food is also a huge offender. Eating fresh food at home is your best defense. I'm Annette Hammond.
And we're back. It's Frankie Sense and More, and the gang is now all here. Dovid is here, and Brent is here, and of course, I'm your host, Frankie, and I'm here. So just before we went to break, Dovid was explaining to us what the Kabbalah was, and he was. I think you're at the part of the Zohar, and
Yes.
you want to finish. And Brent, I want you to feel free to ask questions as they come up to you.
Okay. So just the Zohar was also written down during that time, but it wasn't delivered to the earth until 1,000 years later. And no one could make really sense of it until the Kabbalah, which was another 300 years later. And then from that time, the emergence of what's considered Kabbalah today, modern Kabbalah, from the Arizal, so that spread out through the Baal Shem Tov, the Hasidim. We're now in, let's say, I think we're 10 generations from that. We're really, it's really, so much of this knowledge is in the world now. And we need to get into the whole world. It's really cool knowledge about creation, and it's just such beautiful stuff. Anyway, I can go on and on.
There's a lot of people, very interested in it. People like Madonna, who was learning the Kabbalah. But let's talk about your book, Kabbalistic Tarot. And I know that Brent reads tarot, and I read tarot a little bit. And, of course, you teach tarot on Udemy, I think. Do you still teach it on Udemy?
Yes, actually, yes, I do, actually. Yes, I have a little course there.
So your Kabbalistic Tarot is Hebraic wisdom in the major and the minor arcanas. So tell us a little bit about how you saw the relationship. Or, Brent, do you know anything about the Kabbalah?
A little bit. There was an excellent documentary that came out not long ago called Kabbalah Me, which is a story of a disenchanted middle-aged man who was trying to find some meaning in his life, and he decided that he would take up studying the Kabbalah after the term kept being recommended to him time after time after time. And he went on a full-blown exploration of it in his native New York, and then also even going to Israel to study with some of the masters over there. And it was really a remarkable chronicle of the story that he went through and getting acquainted with it and seeing all of its different aspects in terms of whether you want to study it from the standpoint of being a religious concept or just a philosophical concept. Fascinating stuff.
Well, I see it more as kind of a mathematical concept, a structure. And I see that what the Kabbalah shows us is how the Creator speaks to us through the structure of life. And the basic structure in the Kabbalah is 10. We're in the sun and the 9 planets. We have 10 fingers, 10 toes. And the body can be described in 10, in 3 triangles. The triangle of the head, the 2 hemispheres of the brain and the third eye, the 2 arms in the body, the 2 legs in the sex, and then speech. And I saw that this was depicted in the tarot in each of the 4 suits, which were the 4 elements. And the interesting thing was that it starts with the number 2 and goes to 10, and then it has 5 court cards in the place of 1, which makes a lot of sense Kabbalistically, because the Kabbalah explains how the soul is very large and comes into the right side of the brain through a line of light. And the soul has 5 sections to it. So, and then the major arcana is 22 cards, which are the 10 zeros, these 10 elements, male and female, each with its essence. So that's what convinced me that, I understood the language of the tarot.
So when you're reading it from a Kabbalistic point of view, the tarot, did you make your own tarot cards then?
No, I continue using the Rider-Waite, but I understand the tarot as a Kabbalistic language, so if someone were to turn over these cards randomly, it would allow one's soul to give them a message. So that's what I do when I read tarot, is I try to help people understand the message that they themselves have turned over. And that's why I don't like to do tarot over the phone.
Gotcha. Okay, and so those who are maybe afraid of tarot or don't understand what tarot is, let's talk about for a moment. I mean, you have the Fool's Journey, which is oneself, and it's really about your own journey through life.
Yes, absolutely. And your journey with the Creator.
Mm-hmm. Is that how you read it? Brent?
I primarily look at tarot cards as being like a sort of radio receiver.
Uh-huh.
You know, when the person is having the reading done, they put their energy into the cards, and then it gets displayed back to them in graphic form. So a lot of people I know who may have been skeptical, thinking, oh, they have power to control you and so forth. I said, personally, I don't believe in that. I believe that really that the only thing they do is they pick up your vibes and tell them back to you in a form that you can see graphically.
Interesting. Yeah.
But that's not so far off from what I do. I just consider it more the soul reflecting back. But I do believe the cards, because they are Kabbalistic, that if someone does take the cards and says something that they shouldn't say to someone, like predict the future, or anything like that, that would be like a curse to a person. So people should be afraid of these cards and shouldn't let just anyone read them. I would certainly caution people from that.
Interesting. Now, you wrote like a gazillion books and only published 5. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing, for a writer, the main thing is to write the book. Mm-hmm. And, it's hard to get stuff published. And I really thought Kabbalistic Tarot would really be an opening to me. And the publisher, Inner Traditions, also thought it would be an opening into the Jewish world. But then not one Jewish publication would review the book. So I was kind of, censored, I guess.
Right.
So it's very, and I just, and for my thing, the information keeps coming in, and I just, I'm a writer. I'm not a publisher. I'm not a seller of books. So I still have many books I need to publish, but I have other books that are more important to write.
I came across you on YouTube. There was a video, and I started to watch your videos, and I'm like, this guy is so funny. Like, you really are funny. But you've got your UdiMystic.com. You have the Jewish Bohemian. Now, your blog, the Jewish Bohemian, the stuff that you write about there, is that like, do you do that? Is that for money, or are these topics that you're interested in? I mean, I'm looking at how to appear slimmer without losing weight.
See, this is terrible. This is what happened. I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. It was after 2012, and I just felt all the stuff I'd written, nothing had been accepted, and I was very depressed, and I just let the site go.
Uh-huh.
Someone bought the site and stole my identity. I went to the police. They said it's absolutely illegal what he's doing. I have no idea. He did it on an anonymous website. He's pretending to be me. And so people go on and they see this and, and they think it's me, and it's embarrassing.
Wow.
I didn't write those things. I was really proud of the stuff I read. I always wrote about, I had for many years a thing called Kabbalistic News, where I would write a news item and explain how it was Kabbalistic. And I did it every day, and sometimes you get to a place in life, it just seems like nothing's working, and you get depressed, and I let it all go. I erased things I shouldn't have erased. I feel very badly I did this. But what can one do? I came up with a new, way to describe myself.
Right.
And so my hope is I can, get that going, get enough traffic where that will come up on the top, when someone puts in my name instead of Jewish Bohemian. I still have the YouTube is Jewish Bohemian. I don't know. My problem is, I'm a very, I'm kind of like an introvert, I guess. And so I don't really, I know how to do certain things, but the world kind of baffles me.
Right.
So it always kind of drives me back in to just write and to study, and that's sort of me. Except recently, And I hope it's okay if I kind of bring this up.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it kind of, coincides what we were talking about with the calendar, that we've entered into the 3 weeks of mourning. We've been doing this for 2,000 years after the temple was destroyed, because both temples, the first and the second temple in Jerusalem, were destroyed 500 years apart on the same day. So the rabbis instituted that we should fast on this day, the 9th day of Av, which I think is the 12th of August this year, and it falls on Shabbat, and you push it off to the next day. And a famous Rebbe said that we push it off for one day, should push it off altogether. So it seems to me we're going into a time of the future, the 777, and I think is a way of declaring this that we should push it off forever. So, yes, but anyways, might seem a strange thing to encourage people to do, but it says eventually this day would become a holiday, and I think sometimes you got to put some pressure on God, and I think we should make it a holiday, and we should say we're ready for the future, because things are so bleak in the world right now. It's right. Just stunning how horrible it is. And we need to start seeing what the future is. The future is not, calamity. We're over the hump. The worst is over. And really, there's beautiful things that are coming to us. And, it's interesting. One of the things is Zohar, it makes predictions. And it predicts that there'll be three, like Rome, because that's, what we're living in, will have a battle with a country on the other side of the world. For 3 months.
Wait, I'm going to stop you because we have to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, I definitely want to hear the rest of that. And then we're going to talk to Brent about the movies, because Brent has conscious movies, law of attraction. Here we go. Don't go anywhere, folks, because we are coming right back with Dovid and with Brent. And we're going to hear about the prediction of this hump that we're over. I'm excited about a future where it's positive. I like that.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Heck no, we're just getting warmed up. Frankie Sense and More will be right back after we pay the bills.
Close your eyes and imagine living your life without limits. Where would you go? Who would you meet? What would you do? During an Uncover Your Hidden Genius session, you will discover what's keeping you from living your life with purpose, passion, and fulfillment of your potential. You'll get a clear vision of the steps you need to take to uncover your hidden genius so that you can live a life without limits. Sessions can be done over the phone, Skype, or in person. Find out more at www.joycebufordempowers.com or by calling 903-287-0747.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
It's words you never heard.
Did you hear about the Gaberlunzie bear caught rummaging through a refrigerator in an apartment in Colorado? The tenant heard noises coming from the kitchen and saw a bear with his head in the fridge, looking for anything it could eat. What's the word for food that's unfit for human consumption? Ma wallop. The tenant locked himself in his bedroom and called for help. What's the word for the fear of bears? Ursophobia. We have lots of bears near our Colorado cabin, and we have been told that pepper spray will keep them away. But the idea that it would keep a 500-pound grizzly bear from attacking seems ridiculous to me. I think I'll try the pepper spray on myself and hope the bear doesn't like spicy foods.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
And we're back, and I thank you for sticking around because, the fun never stops at Frankie Sense and More, does it? We are just going to finish off and hear the good news that's about to come for all of us on Earth. Go ahead, Dovid.
Well, it's only part of it, but one of the things that's going to happen, it says there's going to be a war, and it sort of sounds like between like America and China. So it says it'll be for 3 months, and then the world will come together. So obviously, if it's a violent war, violence never brings anything together. But I think it's going to be a trade war, and I think that maybe money will get exposed, and people will go back to a simpler way of life. And it's just absurd. I mean, we just all live in, we're just slaves for the rich people, And whenever they say, that there's too much population, I always think, it's too many rich people. So anyway, and it is that there are many predictions of how things, there's going to be a clear language, we'll understand one another, and the world will rejuvenate, and things are going to be good.
Well, that's probably because of that feminine energy coming in. We're much more likely to want to understand one another than to fight one another.
Precisely.
Nice, I like that. Well, if you want to know more about Dovid and all of the wonderful predictions and his writing and the things that are important to him, definitely you want them to go to the Yudi website?
The Yudi Mystic.
YudiMystic.com. Go to YudiMystic.com and or go onto YouTube and watch some of his videos. They're fabulous. They're really good. Well, Brent, as I promised, Brent is with us, and he is going to talk about a couple of movies that are just coming out or just come out. One being Life Animated. And I want to tell you, Brent, that I was approached by the folks who produced that movie and asked to be on the show. And so I do think that Owen's mom, Cornelia, is going to come on the show in the next little bit.
Excellent.
So I'm kind of excited about that. And they sent me the movie, and I loved it.
It's a really wonderful movie. It's interesting because before the movie came out, I had seen a number of news reports telling the story of Owen Susskind, the central subject in the movie, who was diagnosed with autism at age 3.
Like our other guest here.
His parents were really surprised because he had been such a vibrant child up to that point, and he suddenly went silent. And they did what they could to try and bring him out of it, and the only thing they found that worked was showing him videos of the Disney animated movies. Now, it turns out he had watched those movies before he had gone silent. They apparently had given him quite a bit of joy, and something in that lingered in him after he was in the throes of autism. And it became his mechanism for finding a way to reconnect with the world. He apparently had memorized the dialogue from all the pictures and then used the lines from movies as a filter for understanding the world around him. Really a very inventive way for someone challenged like that to figure out a way to reconnect. And that really unlocked the door for him. It opened up all kinds of new possibilities for him to become more socially involved. And as the movie shows, it not only chronicles his personal history, but it also chronicles his attempts at becoming a high-functioning, relatively self-sufficient adult. And
what was interesting was that his mom figured it out. She goes, he's talking about, a Disney movie. That's a line from Disney. And they figured out that was the actual key to unlocking his language and understanding.
And the other thing that was interesting was that when he had started to emerge, he was beginning to do some drawings, and his dad looked at the pictures that he drew and noticed that there was a connection with all the drawings and the fact that he was drawing all of the sidekick characters from all the movies. Yeah. And he thought of himself as the protector of the sidekicks, the characters who were always there, always could be called upon, but in the shadow of the heroes. And he was the one who was going to be their person to be their champion. It's really very well put together, a nice mix of his history, a nice mix of his current status, a number of clips from the Disney movies that inspired him, and also the incorporation of some original animation depicting, metaphorically, his own personal journey. I recommend it really very highly.
Me too. What a fantastic film. Just absolutely beautiful documentary. And I loved when he went to France and they, the Autistic Society asked him to come and speak and he beautiful French accent when he spoke in French. So I'm like, oh my God, how incredible is that? But he had a real talent for the voices. Like he could, really give these characters in Disney back, like he could do voice work for sure. He could do voice work if he ever wanted to.
Again, that was his key. That was his way out. And I could relate to it in a way myself, because there have been so many times over the years when I was trying to describe situations to people, and I would frequently reference movies, scenes, lines to make a point. When I did that, the point would come across. So the fact that he was doing this too, I said, "Oh, I absolutely get that."
Yeah. And Dovid, you're autistic. You said you have autism, and so how did it make you go silent? Is that why you write, or?
No, it's very odd that you should mention this, because really up until the time that I started learning Torah, my thinking was in Disney characters. Everything was animated in my brain. Yes.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And it's just I had to kind of force my way out of that, because I could have like an animation of God or something, I don't know. But it was all, Disney had a huge effect upon me. It's unbelievable.
Now, Brent, are they doing like showings in different cities? Or is it actually in the theater?
Yes, it's in general release now. I'm not sure how long it's going to be in general release, but at least it is for the moment. So.
Yeah, what if you can run to it? It'll change you. It's so beautiful. I love it. What's the other movie? Is it Shadows of Liberty that you wanted to talk about?
Well, that's actually an interesting movie. That's a movie that's available on DVD right now.
Okay.
It's a movie that explains about the buying and selling of the American media, and essentially how what you're seeing is really, in many cases, little more than veiled corporate speak. Or veiled PR. It draws upon several high-profile cases where the news was intentionally manipulated, where reporters were basically told to stop doing particular stories because they didn't, line up with the corporate or the government agenda.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a very damning indictment in many ways of why the American mainstream media has gotten to the point that it's at right now. So I recommend that one highly. Another one that's on DVD at the moment is called How to Change the World, which is a history of the early days of the Greenpeace movement.
Oh, that was a good one,
it shows how a group of sort of ragtag hippies decided, hey, we're going to go out and change the world, and in many ways did. Amazing how they did it. I mean, they really were sort of flying by the seat of their pants. But they managed to have the right message at the right time, and it caught on and spread. And, nowadays, I mean, Greenpeace in many ways is almost synonymous with the environmental movement.
Absolutely.
So this movie gives you a very well-documented history of the early days of the organization when they were initially protesting the U.S. nuclear testing on Amchitka Island in Alaska, and then going on from there to protest the whale hunting and the seal hunting and so on, and how they became this huge global organization.
And, for people who always say, oh, well, what can I do? And this is one of the reasons I started the Good Radio Network. What can I do? I'm only one person. You know what? When people are activists, when people feel something and they get together, they can change the world. They really can.
Oh, absolutely. And this movie shows it. And it shows that you don't really have to have, oodles of resources to do it. Because they were operating on a shoestring budget. They were grabbing things here and there they could get their hands on to do what they needed to do. And, I mean, word spread. And it's made a huge impact.
Like, everybody knows about Greenpeace. Everybody. Yeah. Crazy. Any other movies?
I know we've been sort of focusing on documentaries, but they've really been kind of the heroes of the summer movie season this year.
They have, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the mainstream big budget stuff they've kind of gone bust. But another documentary that I liked is a movie called The Music of Strangers.
Yo-Yo Ma?
Yeah, Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble, which chronicles the formation of this musical project that he started involving Western and indigenous musicians from around the world to create a totally new sound. And it's interesting because you not only get to hear the music and see what they're doing, but you also learn about how art has become a means for helping to promote cross-cultural understanding. And it was specifically important to Yo-Yo Ma himself because even though he was a child prodigy, he still felt kind of empty with all the acclaim that he was getting from a very young age. He needed to figure out what to do with his talent to make a difference. And this project did that, and it's profiled in this film so well where you hear sounds that, were just never before conceived of in terms of the music that's produced. And you also get to meet several of the musicians to see how their involvement with the ensemble has affected their lives and how they've been able to give back to their own particular cultures, featuring musicians from Syria, Iran, China, and Spain.
Yeah, it's fabulous. That is like one movie that's like, if you love music and you love, just art, that's an art film. You're going to definitely want to go see that.
And the music it's infectious when you're listening to it. I mean, it's the kind of, because it's so fresh and so vibrant and so different from anything else you've ever heard that you don't want the pieces to end.
I know. And that's what's so exciting is that people always think, everything's been done, but it hasn't.
No.
And how incredible, like there's like 26 notes or something, or not even, and 26 letters in the alphabet, but just, I don't know, do, re, mi, fa, sol. I don't know how many notes there are, but like 12 notes or something. And you can create so many different songs and pieces and music, and it all goes together and it goes to so many incredibly complicated ways. It's amazing.
Especially when you combine all these different kinds of instrumentation. The indigenous instruments and the Western instruments. I mean, who would have thought of putting them together? But when you did, it's like creating a new type of fusion cuisine.
Yeah. I love like world music, but I especially love it when things that aren't supposed to go together go together.
Yep.
It's very exciting for me. Kind of like Dovid.
There's 7 notes. There's 7 notes.
7. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, like 7, 7, 7.
7 notes.
Yeah.
And so much music out in the world, and none of it is repetitious. How incredible is that?
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
One of the prophecies.
We're out of time, my friends. We are out of time. I wish I had more time with you because you guys are great, but we are out of time. Thank you so much. Dovid and Brent, thank you so much for coming, and everybody, thank you for listening today.
Thank you, Frankie.
Yeah, thank you, Frankie. Bye-bye.
Bye.